to Brunch with Ellen. I'm your host, Ellen Chindiko. This is a program where we speak about all things adulting. We have time to speak about the issues that affect us daily, be it business, family, relationships, money, careers. We have it all here on Brunch. Getting that first degree, getting your first corner office, getting married and starting a family seems like the natural progression of adulting, right? Well, sometimes things don't go the way that it should. Some families go through difficulties in getting pregnant. They face issues such as infertility, subfertility, or chronic conditions that make it difficult to start a family. On today's episode, we are speaking about an alternative way of building a family, and that is adoption. We have invited in studio today Sue Austin, who is an expert from Kukosha, who will help us delve deeper into this topic. Sue, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Ellen. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. So let's get into it. What is adoption and what does your organization do to help families start a family?
Okay, let me start with the organization maybe. Kukosha is a faith-based organization, and our main focus is permanency for children. All the evidence around the world, research and statistics say that children thrive in families versus institution. Institution care is not good for kids. The outcomes are not good. So we deal with foster care, we deal with adoption, anything that provides a permanent family for children where they can thrive and reach their potential. Adoption specifically is a little different to the other options of care for children. Adoption is a legal process where the child is brought into a family with legal documentation. It's done through the courts, and it's as if that child was born into that family in terms of its legal standing. It's not a reversible thing. Foster care is reversible, place of safety is reversible, adoption is not. So it's a very permanent, binding thing, and it's taking a child that is outside of your family, outside of your bloodlines, outside of your circle, as it were, and bringing them into your family and making them a child, a son or a daughter within your family. Kukosha, in terms of adoption, we assist families to delve into adoption first, to ask the hard questions, to have those conversations, to get information, to get the right information, which is really important. And then we have a support around that and to help people walk that out. And then we actually help them on a practical level to do their paperwork, because sometimes that is a challenge, like getting it done the right way. And you can spend a lot of time going the wrong way, getting the wrong information, and then having to start over. So we try and simplify it, demystify it, and help people engage.
All right. You speak about demystifying the issue of adoption. So who is eligible for this?
So in terms of Zimbabwean citizens have the right to adopt Zimbabwean children. Zimbabwe is one of the few countries in the world where it doesn't cost you a fortune to adopt. Many countries, there are thousands and thousands of dollars worth of fees that are paid in an adoption. Zimbabwe is not like that. I think it costs $5 to make a court application, and that's it in terms of legal process and costings, unless you're using a lawyer for some reason. But Zimbabwean citizens are eligible. Single women are eligible.
Oh,
that's something that most
I
people don't understand. Yeah, most people don't
know that.
Yes, they do. The Children's Act allows for single women to adopt. The Children's Act even allows for a woman to adopt with the consent of her husband. She can adopt in her own right, as long as her husband consents to it. So it's much more available, it's much more accessible than a lot of people realize. The challenges that we have are when people live outside of Zim. If you're resident in Zim and you're a Zim citizen, it's like being at the border and going through the green route. You just have to go through the steps. Yeah, when we have non-residents, or if we have citizens living outside of Zim, then the dynamics are a little bit different. It's a little more complicated.
You mentioned that single women can adopt.
Yes, ma'am.
To bring it, we're always talking about equal rights. Can single men adopt children?
Not in the same way. A single man can adopt where there is a blood relation to the child and where there is an appropriate age gap.
Okay.
I don't know that we need to elaborate on that. A 30-year-old man adopting a 17-year-old girl
it becomes
that would be
tricky.
that would be a questionable thing. So, but where there is relationship, you know, and if it's an uncle or a brother maybe, then it would be allowed. But generally, it's not as easily accessible as it is for single women.
Okay, now let's get into the statistics. So in terms of numbers, how many children in this country could we say are ready for adoption or are in care and need adoption?
Okay, that is a question that is almost impossible to answer accurately. We have somewhere between 1.8 and 2 million orphans in Zimbabwe. That's a huge number of children. However, a large number of those children have living relatives, so they're not adoptable. So we have children living in care who've come into foster care or into orphanages, and they do have living relatives. So generally, it will be children who have been abandoned or have been relinquished by the birth mom. It may be that the birth mom gave the baby up and said so at the time. But generally, where there isn't attachment, those children are clear for adoption. So I'm sorry to be so vague on that one, but it's almost an impossible figure to give you as to how many are adoptable. But certainly there's not a shortage of children that are needing families. Yeah.
There are a lot of myths and misconceptions around the issue of adoption.
Sure.
And if we can help people break that down and understand the importance of adoption, can you maybe give us some of the myths that you've heard around adoption? You know,
I think there's a lack of understanding, and history plays into it. You know, history, culture, and a lack of understanding really is what plays into it. And I think you know, some of the myths are. You will never attach to this child. It will never be as if it was your own child. You know, the child will resent you. What are you going to do if the child dies? Who are you going to tell if the child dies? You know, when the child wants to marry, who are you going to tell? Who can talk about that? And then, you know, in terms of culture, we can get into totems and spiritual things and, you know, bringing strangers in, or we've got children in our own family that need care. Why are we bringing strangers in? So there's a lot of different things that play into that. And, you know, at the end of the day, when I look at my children, who I didn't carry and give birth to, there's something in my heart that says, did I really not give birth to that child? Because the connection is so strong, you know. That's my child. That's my child. And it's not to take away from the hard stuff, because there is going to be hard stuff. And we have hard conversations. You have to be ready for hard conversations. But our job is to help them process their story, help them find strength in their story, not be victimized by their story, but help them be strong. And, you know, I want my daughters who are adopted to be strong women and to have a sense of who they are and what they can achieve. And that adoption is part of their story, but it doesn't define them. And adoption is part of my family's story. It doesn't define who my family is.
Sue, thank you very much. We're going to take a short break, and we're going to come back and speak to Sue again, as well as another guest, Kevin, who is an adoptive parent. We'll be right back after this. Hello, you're still watching Brunch with me, Ellen Chindiko. We're talking about adoption as a viable option of expanding or starting a family. Earlier, we're speaking to Sue, who gave us some of the details on how her organization has been helping families go on this journey of adoption. We're back with her, and we're joined by another guest, Kevin, who is an adoptive parent. I didn't mention in the previous episode that Sue is also an adoptive parent. So we're going to go into details about their journey to adoption. Kevin, how has been your experience to adoption? I understand you have children already. You had children before you decided to go on this adoption journey. Tell us, how did you go about it, discussing it with your wife and deciding we need to add to the family?
Thank you for having me. It was basically my wife and I had a discussion before we got married, and we just spoke about adoption. If we would face challenges, would we consider adopting? So we literally had agreed way before we tied the knot. then we had our 2 boys, and then we decided to have a third one. So we just basically started talking again, saying, what about we just adopt? What would the issue be there? And from there, we then decided to follow up and go after it. Then we met Sue through Mr. Jeff Chifamba, from church. So it was on an often Sunday at church. That's where we had we heard about Sue and also orphanages and what was happening, the stats, how many babies were being lost and thrown away as we were, per month, and it was staggering numbers. And this was just Harare alone. So then we then basically got into it. We got to meet Sue, got talking about it, and then through Sue, she helped us go through the process.
Sue, if you can tell us, how did you go on this journey of adoption?
The first time that I adopted, I think was just a divine accident, if you like. And I was working in an organization that cared for people that were living on the streets and high poverty levels. And there was a little boy who was sick. He was HIV positive, and he literally got left at my office. And so, I ended up adopting him. And he passed away because ARVs were not accessible 23 years ago. But there's a ministry named after him, and Kukosha grew out of that ministry, actually. So, there's something to show that he was there. This time around, we had 2 biological kids, and I just felt like there was space, like, we could do something here, we could do another child here, and really felt like, just would love a little brown girl would be awesome. And anyway, it turned out to not be a little brown girl, it turned out to be a very dark little boy.
Okay.
But absolutely was the right little boy for us, and he is turning 9 now. And that was much more intentional. The second time was much more intentional. So it's just been it's a journey, and I think for everybody it's a journey.
Yeah. Can you just take us through some of the legal aspects of that?
Yeah. So basically, you've got your basic police clearance. If you haven't traveled, you haven't lived out of the country, it's pretty easy. And also, if you're both of the same nationality, Zimbabwe, it's easy. Takes a shorter time, but then if you've lived outside Zimbabwe for a while, like most of us Zimbabweans,
it becomes a bit more.
Basically.
Yeah.
You need.
All right, Kevin, you mentioned the issue of having your police clearance and all the other documents, but Sue, maybe you can weigh in on this as well.
Ellen, it's really important that people understand that the Department of Child Welfare are the people who process adoptions. So we're not an adoption agency, we're an advocacy organization, and we help people to get themselves ready and to prepare themselves, but the department are the people who process adoptions. So even if we help you do it, they are the ones who will be approving and doing the paperwork. And then you do go to court, you make your application in court, and then you do that first actually, and then once you have that, then we introduce you to social welfare, and then they take over basically, and they're the ones who will do the home visit, will do the follow-up, the assessments, and then connect you to the child that potentially that you can adopt. But it's just really important to know that they are, if anybody offers you an adoption through a private means, it's not an adoption. It has to go through the Department of Child Welfare.
That's good. That's very good. And how long does the process usually take?
That's a really interesting question again. Kevin and Tessa's adoption process took a long time because they had lived outside of Zim, so they had to get clearances from outside of Zim. But if you're in Zim, I mean, we've had families that have cleared in a matter of 2-3 months, and the baby that fits what they wanted came up very quickly, and they've had a child placed very quickly. So, and then obviously there's some process to go to court to have an adoption order, but it can be, if everything's in order and it's a Zim family, you're talking months, not years.
How do you prepare your children, for the new child that is coming into the family. I guess this conversation cannot be just had over brunch. It can, you need to go
Yeah.
beyond that. How do you prepare your children as well as your extended family?
Yeah, it's more down to talking, teaching them. It's good if you can get help. Um, people like Sue and Nkosha and organizations like that which give you support and all. If you can start involving them, talking to them, and you bring up the subject, ask them how they feel, what they think about it, and all. That's basically how you start going about it. And like with our kids, it was literally like, hey, you're taking time. When
Yeah.
is when is she coming?
Oh, that's
Yeah.
so sweet.
So
yeah.
it's quite good because with kids they're very
They easily adapt.
yeah, and they tell you
Yeah.
what they feel, and if you ask them, they'll tell you, and it's good. Yeah.
And then let's speak about this. The elephant in the room. There's the issue of culture.
Yeah.
You're black Zimbabwean men.
Yeah.
So you're married into a black Zimbabwean family. So culture plays a huge deal when it comes to the issue of adoption. Tell us how you go around that.
For us, basically, we knew the how people felt about adoption. It's the whole move on just adopt from your family. Why do you need to bring in so and so strangers and all that to pause, the totems and all that?
Yeah.
So we are Christians, so for us the totem thing has got no place in our home. But obviously you've got the rest of the family, the extended family. So literally we had to make our decision as a family and make our position. Then we started discussing it with our immediate family, your grandmothers, those who have immediate impact into your family.
Yeah.
And then literally telling them what,
this is it.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Take it or leave it,
Yeah.
and setting the conditions in the grounds.
It is very exciting to hear, and that you have to take a stand if you're getting into parenting, whether it's just regular parenting and adoption. You have to just be the adult and take a stand for your children.
Yeah.
But Kevin, thank you very much for coming to our program, and Sue, it was lovely having you. And to our audiences, I hope you managed to learn something about adoption. It is really a viable option of expanding or starting a family. There's so many children out there that need assistance. So we're going to put Kukosha's details at the bottom of our screen so that you can contact them if you need to find out more about adoption. But that's it from me and the crew behind the scenes here at Brunch with Ellen. Until next time, goodbye.